Welcome to the very first episode of Take a Bite Out of South Florida, the podcast that delves deep into the region's vibrant food scene. Who better to have as my first guest than award-winning food critic and journalist with over 3 decades of experience in the industry, Michael Mayo. He founded the popular and sometimes controversial Let's Eat South Florida Facebook group, which is home to over 103,000 members. And he's also the executive producer and co-host of the Mike Mayo's Lunchbox Livestream show. Mayo has won tons of awards for his honest restaurant reviews and food features. And in case you didn't know, he has a strong background in sports and news as well. He has covered many high-profile events, including Super Bowls, Olympic Games, presidential inaugurations, major trials, and hurricanes. He lives in Dania Beach and has a teenage daughter, and he is always on the lookout for good pizza, uni, and pastrami. And we are definitely going to have to get back to the uni because I can't get into it. So I'm eager to hear more about that. I'm really excited to have you here today, Mike, and I can't wait to bring you all along with me as we dig deep into his journey in the food industry with memorable meals, go-to restaurants, and more. So let's get into it. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Shayna, I am both honored and flattered. Is it for real? This is really the first show, and I'm really the first guest.
First show, first episode. You were the first person I said I want Mike Mayo on my show.
Wow. Now I know you're the one who's going to be asking the questions. But my question is why?
Because I feel like if there is like the king of South Florida food, it's you.
Well,
I mean, since I've been in South Florida now. It'll be 12 years in September. And when I first moved here, my goal was I really wanted to just write in the food industry. Obviously, you were the first person that I found, and I followed your career since I moved here. And we've met at many occasions on many events and things like that. So
food festivals and judging events.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a pleasure. And welcome to the podcast world.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm not a straight up podcaster. I do a live stream show now, but tell you what, it's fun because, as a writer, you used to slave over the, whatever it was, PC, typewriter. Back when I first started, there was these little horrible machines, and it was like you'd struggle to come up with the right sentence, the right lead, the right paragraph. And now it's like you just sit here with the microphone and you just kind of talk.
Yeah, it's a little easier, I think. It's, more casual, more lighthearted, and fun, and and you get to interact with people. When you're writing, you're like alone in a room for hours and hours, and you're just staring at a screen, and like that kind of gets boring after a while.
And this is all about, like you said, conversation, interaction, which is the way the world is going now.
Absolutely.
And, things have changed so much since I started in journalism and newspapers.
Tell me how you did start. Like, just walk me through your.
It's interesting.
Yeah, all of it.
I basically started off as a high school and college. I just, for some reason, always gravitated towards the newspaper, and it was a place where kind of some, people who were interesting hung out, and we weren't the jocks. We weren't the total nerds. I guess some of the newspaper people were nerdy, but
I was totally a newspaper person growing up too, and yearbook and all of that.
And I went to high school in New York City, in Manhattan, even though I grew up in Brooklyn, and I had to take this a commute of basically a full bus ride to a subway station and then 2 or 3 trains every day to school. It took me like between an hour and 10 minutes and an hour and a half to get to school and then back every day. And this is before the era of cell phones or, iPhones. So we actually bought newspapers, and I would read newspapers every day. And I just became hooked on, sports and sports writers. And growing up in the city, I was a big, baseball fan, football fan. So I started off in sports.
Right. And
then, again, the whole my career path, I had no idea what I wanted to do when I went to college, and I was they didn't even have a journalism program where I went to college, which was Tufts University in Massachusetts. But they did have 2 newspapers on campus. One was a daily, that was for total masochists, and then they had a weekly paper. I worked for the weekly, and then I also my field of study was Soviet and Eastern European studies. This was in the mid-'80s.
Okay.
I took Russian language and Russian history and studied all the Kremlinology and all that. And then, I thought maybe I would get into diplomacy or foreign relations or something like that. And basically, then right after I graduated, the Soviet Union crumbled and everything I learned was useless. So I became a sports writer.
Yeah, totally changed that from one spectrum to the other.
No, but I did get an internship at the Boston Globe.
Oh,
and in their sports department, which was like an incredible place at the time, had all this top level talent. And yeah, it was great.
That's really cool.
It was a great learning ground. And yeah, just one job. I ended up getting a full-time job in South Carolina for a year. And then I got an offer to come down here to Fort Lauderdale in 1989 as a sports writer.
I was 1 year old.
Oh, God. You know how to make a guy feel old. But yeah. No, and then it was great because I came down here and I loved it. I fell in love with South Florida.
It's beautiful.
And I've been blessed because I was able to just basically keep finding new adventures and new challenges without ever once having to call the moving van, because I had all these different opportunities at the Sun Sentinel where I did sports and sports columns for a while, and then I had the opportunity to do hard news and politics.
And then what brought you into the food world?
And then the food world beckoned. And look, I've always been into food. And even when I was in college, I had some jobs working in the restaurant industry. Not many, but I always liked good food. And then when I was a sports writer, and I would, this is back when newspapers had actual travel budgets, and I would go around the world to different events. And I just was one of those guys that loved to check out the local food scene. And I would go to Northern California a lot for work. And I had college buddies that relocated there. And, you know, my first trips to San Francisco and then going up to Napa and Sonoma.
Great food.
Fell in love with wine country, fell in love with the whole food culture there. And so, you know, I hate the word foodie, but I was always into food.
Yeah.
So, and it just became a passion of mine. And then when, lo and behold, one day, the gentleman who was the food critic for a long time at the Sentinel named John Chanachuk, he took a buyout at the end of 2015. And I basically raised my hand. I went into the feature editor's office and I said, so what are you doing about the food critic job? She goes, nah, I don't know yet, but what do you know? I said, well, I've been eating for, at that point it was 50 years. And look, I had obviously, cut my chops already in different venues, but I was an unknown in the field of food. So, yeah, they basically had me do a little tryout while I was still doing these news columns, I would, basically start writing some restaurant reviews. And they liked the way I did it. They liked my approach. I wasn't talking foodie or gourmet. I was talking like a real person who liked going out to eat and liked talking about restaurants.
And that's probably why people got hooked, and became you became so successful, is because you were just being authentic. You're just a person who just likes food and wrote about it in a way that really resonated with most people. Oh, so I think that's what it was that kind of just made people gravitate towards you in your writing.
To me, I've always had friends, throughout my life that were in the business, chefs, people that worked at some high-end restaurants around in New York, people that worked for Jean-Georges. And I just always thought there was this real kind of, just a natural bonding and understanding of people who are in like newspapers and in restaurants, because it's the same thing as where you could do you get 99 facts right in a story, but if you get one thing wrong out of 100, that's what you're going to hear about.
Yep.
And sometimes that'll ruin your whole day. And same thing at a restaurant, you could turn out 100 plates and they're all great, but it's the one lousy one now, especially with all the social media where everybody's a critic.
Yes.
And again, it could ruin a whole restaurant's reputation, even though they do 99% of things well.
Right.
So like that with newspapers is the same. And then it's this whole thing of every day, okay, you did great today. You wrote a great story today. You had a great service today. Now come back and do it again tomorrow and the next day and the next day. Mm-hmm. So I have a, feel I feel for everybody in the restaurant industry because
Right.
it is this grind.
It is. And it doesn't get easier.
No.
But on that note, as for these restaurants, like, what are some of your most memorable experiences in the restaurants here in South Florida specifically? Like memorable meals in the years that you've been or that you were writing for the Sentinel?
Well, okay. So I did that for, let's see, it was 5 years. It was like 2016 through the beginning of 2020. Just when the pandemic hit is when I happened to take a bite at it. And it was purely coincidental. It was just I'd reached a point where newspapers weren't getting any bigger or better or healthier, and I still had things that I wanted to do and explore. So, but in those 5 years, I got to experience a lot of different places in South Florida, and it's one of those things. Food is so subjective. That's the number one thing. There are no rights and wrongs. I mean,
what you like might not be what I like. What I like might not be what you like.
Right. And all you can do is come in from a place where you explain what your likes are and what maybe you try to avoid. Me, I've always been a guy, I'm pulling for small, independent places, mom and pops. I mean, chains are fine. And I'm not even talking about like chains like Outback or TGIS. I'm talking about, everything you go to now, even on the upscale the luxury
is
dining out is something that's now being replicated, and it might be like 5 locations in Tokyo and Abu Dhabi and London, and you go to whatever it is, Zumo down in Miami,
or like Nobu has locations all over, and
I call them luxury chains.
That's exactly.
And they do what they do well at a high price point, but I still would rather find that little that couple that broke away from the high-end restaurant world and decided to start a new life for a better, calmer lifestyle. And I'm thinking specifically of the Behrmans, Jeremy and Cindy Behrman at Oceano Kitchen in Lantana.
Yes.
Like that, when I first went there, I was like, oh, this is my nirvana, because it's a small little place. They didn't take reservations. They took it was cash only. Yep. It has this little outdoor deck. And then the food, everything that turned out, the daily changing menu, and they only have 8 things, but then you take every bite, and every component of every bite is just considered and beautiful and makes sense. And that's the kind of thing that is like, oh yeah, this is the kind of place that I want to eat at. I want to sing their praises. And even though people might, fetch about, oh, well, they don't take reservations. It's like some places are worth, bending to, and you go to their will.
And those are the places you want to support. Those, I feel the same way about the mom and pop, the like little small family-owned places. Those are the experiences that are sometimes, hole-in-the-wall places or smaller places. Those experiences you can't find anywhere else.
Yeah, and it's, again, when they bring their own, history, background, personality, soul to the plates, it's you can feel it. You don't have to be this high-end snobby foodie that knows the difference between, a Béarnaise and a Bordelaise sauce or whatever. All you have to do is just, when you walk into a place, some places feel like it's engineered and that it has plates that have been, tested in a kitchen somewhere and replicated, and it's for, 10 different restaurants, and they don't want the kitchens to veer from that at all. And then there are some places where you go in and say, oh, wow, I can see this guy's just improvising. And he'll go with what's fresh in the market that day. He'll go with what's the fish that's, that's just been caught by his friends who have a, commercial fishing license. So that's what I go with.
And we're lucky here. So when you say, local ingredients and fresh ingredients, we're lucky here in South Florida that we do have access to fresh waters and different farms and all the places here, the local farmers, the local, there's just all the fresh ingredients here. It makes such a difference. And I love going to restaurants that say like, oh, we source locally, or, the menu changes every day depending on what's in season or what we found at the market this morning. And, everything is just fresh and good.
No, and you talk about, experiences, so that's what I'm looking for, where there are chefs who are actually, in tune with the local purveyors and, whether, down in it's funny because, the different counties have their own different personalities and feel. And, Broward has been kind of mystifying because there's a lot of great, what we call ethnic joints. It's, smaller family-run places on the periphery that's not in the touristy places, but Vietnamese places and, Salvadoran and some just things that are off the beaten path that are, you can find really good meals, but it doesn't necessarily have the atmosphere, the plating, and all that stuff. Now, Miami now is obviously turned into this major mecca of food scene. But what I'd like to see in Miami is that some of these homegrown talents who worked for some of the big brand name chefs now, struck out on their own, and they are winning attention and Beard Awards and Michelin stars. Jeremy Ford at Stubborn Seed, and he's got his place now up at
PGA, which is fantastic.
It's a fantastic place for people with money. The Butcher's Club is great,
but you need some. Yeah, so you're going to spend a pretty penny there.
But Jeremy is great. He's dynamite, and Michael Beltran down at Ariete, and the couple at Boya Day down in Miami. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's like. Just fantastic. And again, what I like is the smaller independent streak, as opposed to, now I'm the place in, a lot of places along Las Olas and now even Atlantic are getting a little bit dispiriting to me because, the rents get higher and it becomes, it's
You're losing that small town charm.
Yeah. Atlantic started off here in Delray. The forerunner was 32 East and Butch Johnson and their motto there was it's all about the food.
Right.
And now it's like it's all about the rent because all these places
so many places are leaving or closing because of that, which is really sad. And then it's the only thing that comes in are these like big box chain restaurants, and like you said, those aren't the places where you're getting the real down-home experience.
Those feels like, again, the engineered places. And, down on Las Olas, all right, there's a place that a lot of people seem to love, and it fits perfectly with a lot of the Broward, Fort Lauderdale taste, and not to poo-poo it, but like this, it's called Eddie V's, and
we're getting one. I'm pretty sure there's one opening in Boca. I thought I saw that.
It probably is, but it's a national chain, but it's from, I believe, Darden, Darden Restaurant
Darden.
Group, which is
like Red Lobster.
They have all these other chains at different price points. Eddie V's happens to be their upscale, high-end price point. And it was a beautiful dining room, and they had really impeccable service. And the GM there, a lot of people know him and love him. He's worked at different places on Las Olas, Mike. So if you're going in there for an occasion, they'll do all the little touches right. But I went in there, and it's like the menu, which they build themselves as, like a steakhouse and seafood, prime seafood. And I look at the menu, and there's, South African lobster tails and Faroe Island salmon and halibut from Alaska and fish from, the Northeast, Chesapeake Bay. And I was like, excuse me, where's the grouper? Where's the yellowtail snapper? Or, where are the stuff, the Key West pink shrimp? Where's all the local product? And they're like, no, we don't have any of that. And I was like, well, I'm sorry. Like, that's disqualifying to me. It's
disappointing because you're like, wait, like you have all of these wonderful ingredients at your fingertips in South Florida. Why aren't you using them?
Yeah, and they don't give the local managers that discretion to bring in some local product and develop their own local dishes and recipes. And that, again, it's disappointing. And instead, they have this Lobster Bisque, which, the bisque itself, the base of it was nice and creamy, but these little bits of lobster at the bottom, you could tell just came out of a cryovac bag where it was just like had no sweetness, no life. And I'm just like slapping my head saying, all these people think this is great. And okay, I mean, if you think it tastes good, fine. But I guess, I kind of know, how the sausage is made, and it's not fresh lobster that's fresh steamed in the shell and put into a bag. So
it makes a difference.
Yeah. So not to harp on the negative, there were so many more positive things. And that, what I want to tell people is just you got to go out and explore. And don't be afraid to go into that little hole in the wall that's maybe in a neighborhood that, maybe you've driven by the place a million times. And I've had these experiences where I finally go into a place that I've, for whatever reason, hadn't been in 20 years. And you go in and you end up having a fantastic time, and it might be at a lower price point, and it's got a neighborhood feel for it.
Yep.
Thinking of this, there's a like Caribbean Guyanese place in Pembroke Pines that I was turned on to by a friend of mine, and he'd been going there for years, and they have all these kind of Caribbean dishes. Guyanese food has a lot of Chinese elements because they had a big influx of Chinese immigrants that were workers there for a long time. And so they have this kind of mixed up rice with like kind of a jerk seasoned chicken, but with like a fried rice element. And it was just like great. That sounds amazing. It was great. And it's like $11 or $12, and you get enough to feed an army for like 3 days.
What's this place called?
Oh, that place was called Tropics Lounge, and it's on Pines Boulevard. I've written about it on the Let's Eat group.
Lounge.
Yeah, and
that sounds really.
There's just so many of these places around.
Yeah,
and
I feel like you just have to go off the beaten path and trust it, and not be afraid to try something that's totally out of your comfort zone. And we do have that opportunity here in South Florida. There's so many restaurants and so many of these smaller mom and pop, family owned.
Yeah.
So on that, you mentioned about the Let's Eat Facebook group. So you have this Facebook group, Let's Eat South Florida. And for those of you for people who don't know or aren't familiar and aren't part of the group, which they should be, tell us the main gist of it. It's very funny. And you can go down a rabbit hole reading the comments and the posts.
You can go down a rabbit hole. So, so one of the past, after I left the newspaper as a critic, one of the things that was bothering me about newspapers and traditional media is, it used to be we would be on high and write our thing and dispense our opinion and nuggets. And then, either kind of for beginning days, it would fall into a vacuum and you didn't even know what people thought unless people, would send you an email or, leave a voicemail, a nasty message. Then we got into the era of, this was like in the late, 2005 to 2010. And before I was getting food, I would write a daily blog about news. And that got huge hits and traction. And there was a comments section where people could go back and forth about what I had written. And in that, it was like that interchange where it could get ugly and then you'd have to delete comments and things like that. But in it basically was, and this was before really the days of Twitter or Instagram, and Facebook was just starting off. But I felt that there was a sense that was a turn where, again, things became more democratized and people wanted that interaction, even with somebody that was a longtime journalist or, and I liked that, mixing it up back and forth. So the Let's Eat group started back in 2018. I can't believe it's been almost 5 years.
Wow.
And it came out of, I was a co-creator of it with other editors, my features editor at the Sun Sentinel, Gretchen Day Bryant, who is now the managing editor, and one other editor there, David Shiz. It was basically the three of us decided to do this because a couple of other papers had done the same thing with Facebook groups. And we started it, and it kept growing and growing, and now it's become, and even after I left the paper, they were nice that we've reached an understanding where I like doing it, they like having me involved, and I still, mix it up. And yeah, it gets a little contentious. It's one of those things. What I like about it better than Yelp is that, on Yelp, somebody leaves this 1-star review that they may or may not know anything they're talking about. And it's really only on the restaurant owner to respond, and that puts them in a bad position. On this group, I act as kind of a referee / sometimes I have my opinions, but I want to be fair. So if somebody writes something that, I'll ask a lot of questions of the person who left the post. And then, I want to find out, is there more to the story?
Yeah, it sparks conversation.
And want to have a conversation. Now, sometimes the conversation goes beyond the pale. That's why we have to start deleting comments and handing out suspensions. But the thing is, trying to make it entertaining and also informative. And people, if you glean it the right way, it's not all about people bitching and moaning. It's also, you can find a lot of good new places. And it's all these people all over the place. So you can find out things in your neighborhood. And one of my friends the other day said, I thought of you the day that Jerry Springer died because he likens Let's Eat. He goes, "You're like Jerry Springer when you would just unleash the pandemonium, and he would just sit back there with his microphone and a little smirk on his face and just watch." I was like, "Well, I'm not totally like that, but sometimes."
Kinda. I mean,
but yeah. It's good, I think, to mix it up, and we get into issues and things about real world restaurant experiences and people, what upsets them, and I think. The industry people, a lot of them, they're watching it, they're monitoring it, and it's also instructive for them because they know that what ticks people off.
Yeah, it's good for like getting feedback. I know a lot of restaurant people, like owners and management, they'll watch it, and then if they see something that is specific to their place, they can chime in. Like if someone asks a question or is like. They don't understand something that's going on. They can chime in and be like, "Hey, this is what's happening, and this is why it's happening, and blah blah blah." Yeah, which is great, and it's nice.
It leaves room for explanation. That's and again, I think it's much better than Yelp because of the back and forth. Yeah, and we could flesh out. And again, there's nuances everywhere. So. I'm always amazed by some of the posts. But, since I left the paper, I've been working with that. And then there's also the Best of Delray Beach app, which I've been working on. Yeah, for 2 years now. I can't believe. But, it's trying to Best of Delray Beach app is the first live community of what we hope to be a growing network that's going to fill a gap and fill a need. And it's called Best of Local, and you could actually download it from the App Store or Google Play. Just look up Best of Delray or Best of Local. But this, local entrepreneur named Stephen Dickstein used to work in Hollywood, used to be in advertising. He moved here a while back, and he reached out to me just from following me through the Let's Eat group, and he has this idea of he just wanted to put together a curated restaurant and entertainment guide along with local services directory, and also have content that will be reviews and also maybe fill the gap of a lot of newspapers are falling by the wayside, and a lot of the smaller publications and smaller community papers that eventually we'll have a content section that will fill that gap and have local news and features and tidbits and all kinds of other multimedia interactive things, and also have podcasts. But for now, we built it as kind of this local directory, and it basically he got the idea from when he was selling some real estate, and he'd get the same questions over and over of, where do I get my hair done? And how do I find a babysitter? And what's the best pizza? Yep. And he said, why not just build an app for that? And it could be replicated all over. And, we launched it. The app went live last year. And, in a little under a year, we've gotten some good traction. A lot of people have downloaded it. But in conjunction with the app, we're going to have, we have this Facebook group, and it's also kind of patterned after, there's other local Facebook groups in Delray, but also the Let's Eat model, which is to try to get people to get engaged. Right. And it kind of works back and forth with the app. And to me, it's exciting because it's the new thing, and it's an area of growth. And hopefully you're going to bring these to other communities around South Florida, and it'll be useful and information at the palm of your hands. And also, it's just a thing that will be growing, as opposed to, newspapers is something that's dying off, and want to find the next best thing for the new era of people getting information in new ways, in the palm of their hands, usually. And
it's cool because you've been doing happy hour events, contests, and giveaways featuring all these restaurants for the Best of Delray app, featuring Delray restaurants. And that's a really good way to get the community involved and get them to the restaurants to really experience them firsthand.
So our philosophy was this, is that, we want restaurants, I curate, we have this thing called Best of the Best. So it's like our annual top, and we don't call it top 10 because I think this year now there's 15, and it's not just restaurants. It's also markets and place where you can just get, like an ice cream parlor. We got Lily's handmade ice cream on there because I love that ice cream. But then we have all these other areas of the food and the eating part and the nightlife and the bars. They don't ever have to pay. We're not ever going to ask them to pay. because, we want to make an experience that's beneficial to restaurants and, keep everybody on there. We don't want to, I've heard all these horror stories about things that Yelp and Google have done to restaurants, and they do this kind of pay to play or extortion thing, or if they don't advertise with them, then all of a sudden they filter out all the good reviews. We're not going to be like that. And again, like you said, I think especially after the pandemic, people want to go out again. People want to be a community again.
Definitely.
And the whole restaurant and nightlife world is such an essential part of that. And that's why we're doing, our marketing director, Sarah Sarpolis, is, put together these monthly events now where it's just like a way to get together and spotlight some new places. And it's a lot of fun. It's a place to kind of, just to bring community together. And that's part of what Best Of is trying to do.
So right now on the app, there is a giveaway for Le Colonial in Delray, which is a newer restaurant on the scene that is fantastic. So if you download the app, you can go on there and enter to win a gift card. Yeah,
and the thing is, we always rotate every 2 weeks. We do like the spotlight restaurants. The Le Colonial we're giving away now. That one is ending tonight. The next one I could give it away is we're going to start $100 gift certificate to Death by Pizza, which I don't know if you've tried that, but I think
unfortunately cannot try it because I'm gluten-free, but man, it looks insane.
It's really good.
And people swear by it.
So, and again, this is where, we work with the local restaurant scene that, hopefully they want to get a little promotion. So we, they'll give us a gift certificate to give away as one of our contests. And, we're going to be doing that with some of the spas and the salons and things like that. So it's not just going to be food for the contest giveaways, but food seems to be a big driver because everybody loves food.
Everybody loves food. Yeah. Do you know where the next monthly event will be?
I do. It will be at Lulu's.
Oh, all right.
And it's going to be, I don't want to misspeak, but I think the date is going to be May 18th. We usually have them on Tuesday nights. So Lulu's.
May 18th is a Thursday.
So maybe 16th. It's the 16th. You know what? What? Just go onto the Best of Delray.
Just download the app or the Facebook group, and it's always posted there.
Yeah.
Just search Best of Delray. Is it Best of Delray Beach, Best of Delray?
Either one that you search will come up.
It'll come up.
And
same for the Let's Eat South Florida. You can search for both of those, join those groups. Where else can our listeners find you?
I didn't even get into my daily live stream show, which is also an adventure. And that's been a lot of fun because it's with a longtime radio veteran, Jeff DeForest, who's been on Sports Talk down here for 4 decades. We kind of fell into it. He had the idea of doing a daily kind of radio show, but now we do it live stream, but it's a little bit of combination of sports and food, and we kind of riff off things that are on the Let's Eat group. And that we live stream every day on Let's Eat South Florida. So if you go on there at noon and just click new post, it'll pop up. But it's also, I have on Facebook page, Mike Mayo's Lunchbox. If you just kind of search for Mike Mayo's Lunchbox on your Facebook page, that'll come up, and we live stream the show 12 to 1 on weekdays, but it's also available to watch anytime, day or night. So it's just something that, we have some fun, and we kind of talk about some sports, and we got a lot of sports action going on now. We talk about a lot of the food scene, and if I go out to eat, instead of writing a written review, now I'll give a kind of a broadcast review of my adventures. And it's been a lot of fun because it's a different skill. It's just a different mindset.
Exactly. Yeah, it's different than writing, and you can talk a little bit more about it and get more creative. And I have a couple questions I just want to ask you before we close this out.
I know. And the time flies.
It does. It really does.
And I'm sorry if I meandered a little bit.
No, it is all good. But I want to know, and this might be a really difficult question for you, but all-time favorite restaurant in South Florida?
Oy, I knew
and you can give me a top 3 if you need to, but I just feel like the people need to know.
All right, because everything is situational. It's like, am I going out for an occasion? Am I going out for like my new favorite in Broward now, and it's
let's
kind
start
of
there.
Upscale place. It's Evelyn's. It looks like it's spelled Evelyn's, but it's pronounced Evelyn's. Okay. It's at the Four Seasons, which is a hotel condo on the beach, A1A in Fort Lauderdale. this really talented young chef named Brandon Solomon, who used to work for Mauro Caligreco up at the Four Seasons in Palm Beach.
Oh,
awesome. What was it called? Flores was the name of the restaurant. But Brandon, he came to, and it's kind of a Mediterranean/Israeli
that
restaurant.
is right up my alley.
And they are doing so many really cool things. The food, it just looks fabulous. It tastes fabulous. The pricing is a little bit upscale, but impeccable service, a subdued room, but not overly fancy or fussy. So Evelyn's now is at the top of my list in Broward.
Okay.
But, the other places, I mentioned that Boya Day down in Miami. That's this younger couple that they kind of have Italian-ish, but it's like modern, innovative Italian-American. They do things like a house-made black squid ink, like tagliatelle or linguine, but they make it with a cold crab, like cold crab meat and Japanese Kewpie mayonnaise that they toss together. They do all kinds of innovative things, and they were awarded a Michelin star. Not that I give full credence to all these things, but that place happens to be like outstanding, and I love it. And again, it's small and homey, and I love the vibe there. And then, I'll say up here in Delray Beach, okay, I mentioned Oceano Kitchen. That's in the 3. I could go on for 10 of them.
That's Lantana.
Yeah, Lantana. And then and here in Delray Beach, I love the Grove. And
always. That's a top for me, too.
Yeah. And
for special occasions.
Yeah. And the Grove is one of those places that, it's funny, we talk about, some restaurant, people want to go in and have the restaurant, cater to their every whim. And, some restaurants are in the business of pleasing their customers and saying yes. The Grove is one of those places that they're not afraid to say no. And some places I get upset if they're like, no modifications, no this or that. But that's one of those places that everything comes out is so good. And I understand why they do that. So I'm willing to go with the flow at a place like that.
I'm going to say they've done modifications for me.
Have they? Okay, well then he's a great.
I mean, I don't know if that's just me no. But they definitely have made, and that's why I've been able to. Then
maybe I speak out of turn, but they do some things where I know he's gotten. Also, Michael is the chef owner there, and he's tremendous. But he has done. I know. Again, with social media, where some people complain because they charge for the bread or, things like that, because it's so at a different level and it's so labor intensive and the ingredients. I understand that, not every place you're going to get complimentary bread anymore. And
that's not a thing anymore at all.
Either accept it or don't accept it.
Right.
And some people that don't accept it, then fine. And then go another place because that's not going to be your place. Go
have the free Cheddar Bay biscuits at Red Lobster.
Yeah. Which are pretty darn good. And I like those too.
Yes. Oh, man. Well, this has been really fun. Thank you so much for tuning in to the first episode with me and Mike. And if you have any closing thoughts as we get,
you can see like how maybe I gravitated towards food because I could talk about it not only all day, I could talk about it all night and then the next day. And I love when people come up to me and just start talking about food. And
I feel the same way.
And when I say, what's my favorite now, but again, everything I got a list of 100 places that I love. And when people say, what really irks me is, the people that come here from somewhere else, let's say New York, which is where I'm from. I'm from Brooklyn. And they say, you can't find good pizza. You can't find a good bagel in South Florida. It's like, no, that's horseshit. You can say that. This is not. It just means you haven't looked in the right place or you haven't opened your horizons enough because there's plenty of great things down here.
It might not be what you're used to in New York, but this isn't New York.
Nostalgia is
as many people that's from New York as there are here.
Nostalgia is a wonderful and also terrible thing. Yeah, nothing is going to be as good as when you first were growing up.
Right.
Or what you think it was. But there are plenty of places down here that make good pizza. There are plenty, and even the New York style pizza. Right. There are plenty of good Chinese restaurants down here. And we'll bring it back to uni because he said you can't get into uni. It's one of those things, you're making a face.
I mean, I just can't, I don't love it. I went to an omakase recently and they put caviar on top and that was doable, but I don't feel like I can just, not by itself.
Uni is one of those, like you can say, acquired taste. Like sometimes it has that funk. It's that,
yes, that's what it is.
Sometimes it's like eating a smelling and inhaling a dirty sock.
Dirty socks. That's what who I went to, one of my best friends and I went to an omakase in Boca recently, and that is exactly how she described it.
Now, do you know because there's different kinds of uni. There's the Santa Barbara uni. There's the one from Hokkaido in Japan, which sometimes has a cleaner, less what's the word? Sake, dirty sock. Yeah. So anyway, it's one of those things I happen to love.
It's an acquired taste, I'm sure.
It's an acquired taste.
Absolutely.
But that's the rules. Food is subjective.
Exactly. That's the thing. And we don't all have to like the same things. And that's why food is universal. Everybody eats.
That's it.
But thank you so much for being here with me and doing my first episode. Thank you guys for listening. Remember to follow Mike Mayo on all his social media channels. Don't forget to join Let's Eat South Florida and the Best of Delray app. And if you enjoyed our podcast today, please rate and leave a review, subscribe, do all the things. Your feedback helps improve everything, and it's really important to me. And until next time, keep taking bites of South Florida, and I will see you soon.